Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha. I'm here with our family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad-gītā verse by verse, really getting immersed in it and understanding its relevance to our lives. Can I share a dream that I had with you guys last night that is actually it's kind of embarrassing and also very revealing of my past. But I want to share it with you guys because it was so impactful. Um, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and we were talking just about all of these things, about the Gita and about its relevance in our lives. And one theme in particular, this theme of abandoning ourselves. And this has been like the theme of my life is abandoning myself. And like even in, relationships. I've talked quite a bit about some bad relationships that I've had when I was younger. Abandoning myself in those. And that like, I would do things that I was not totally comfortable with in the name of like making the other person happy. And so I had a dream last night where, like, for some reason, I was at this school and there was a lot of people there, and like my clothes got like really, really dirty. So I had to like change. And I was like just in my underwear in this room. I hope this isn't like too much, but I was just like, and I was so embarrassed. And like my boyfriend, I was like calling in to like help me find some clothes. And instead of like helping me, he was like, "Oh, this is so funny. Your embarrassment is so funny. Let me invite everybody else in to like relish in your embarrassment." And I told him like in that moment, I was like, "No, you're not doing that. I don't want to date you anymore." And he was like, what are you gonna do? Just go study your little Gita? And I was like, "No, I know the Gita. This is why I don't need you in my life anymore. Like the Gita has strengthened me. I know I don't need to tolerate this anymore." Like I don't know, it's so like affirming. I woke up like really like, oh, the Gita is it's so great. Like we don't need anything but the Gita. That's how I felt when I woke up this morning. So I wanted to share that with you guys. It's powerful, this text, it teaches us how to be there for ourselves.
Thank you
And
for
not in like
sharing.
an egotistic way, but in like a loving way, understanding that we're servants of God and our worth is in our birth. It's not something we have to prove, it's not something we have to convince other people of. It's something that is just inherent to our birth because we're souls, we're spirit souls. That's who we actually are. And as we imbibe that realization and we live from that place, we learn to care for ourselves, both our physical body and our emotional well-being, because it's the vehicle that is facilitating our soul's connection with with the world and with Krishna, and at this present time. So it's it's a beautiful thing. And that's what these teachings do for us. It's like the ultimate therapy course, the deeper and deeper you go. So I wanted to share that dream with you. I hope that wasn't too much and that was relatable. Um, so we have some good texts today. Before we get into it, I do want to invite everybody to Sunday morning japa. We do it at 6 a.m. It's live on Zoom, so it's you don't have to be in person. And it's all the links are on I put the link every week on the same thread. But it's really sweet. It's actually we typically just have like a handful of people show up. And we chant together. We chant japa. And no matter where you are, like if you don't have a practice, if you don't know what it is, if you've been chanting forever, we just meet whoever shows up, we just meet where we're at. So sometimes we'll have people that don't know about japa and we'll talk about it a little. Sometimes it'll be people that have been practicing forever and we'll do some meditation. Sometimes it'll be both and we have kind of some shares and it's really sweet. It's mostly chanting and some guided meditation around that. But anyway, 6 to 7. And if you want to come in like halfway through, like at 6:30 or something, that's more than welcome too. So if you wake up and it's 6:30 and you're like, oh, you can just hop right on for the last half hour and catch it. So please join us with that. Okay, that's the announcement. That's the announcement I'm going to do today. Let's get into the Gita. Before we do that, Poppy, can you say our prayers for us?
Yes. Om Jnana-timirandhyasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jnana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swavami Niti Namine Panchakalpatruveshcha kripa sindhuveya vacha patitanam pavanavaya vaishnavaya namo namo. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Adaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Poppy. So today we are starting in chapter 13. Chapter 13, text 4 is where we're starting. And when you're ready, Shraddhanjali, could you read this verse for us?
Now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted, what its changes are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what his influences are.
Beautiful. Thank you. Sorry, I just lost my screen. Give me just one moment here. Okay, so last week, Krishna introduced one of the most profound distinctions in the Gita, one that us yoga teachers love. There's a field and there's a knower of the field. The body is the field, the soul is the one experiencing it. And just like I just shared through the context of my dream, when we start to really realize this, it changes everything, the way we live this life and the next. Because if I'm not simply this body, if I'm not my thoughts, if I'm not my emotions, then who am I? And most of us have spent our entire lives learning how to improve the field, our health, our careers, our relationships, our circumstances. Our whole culture, our whole life just revolves around these things. But very few of us have learned to understand the one who is experiencing all of it. And this is where Krishna is taking us next. So in this verse, Krishna says, in essence, I'm going to show you the whole picture. And so over the next several verses, Krishna's going to explain what the field is, what it's made of, how it changes, how the body changes, where it comes from, and then who is the knower of the field, and how the knower interacts with the field. So, in other words, here we're getting like a roadmap um, for the rest of chapter 13. And instead of it being just like an abstract philosophy, you're not the body, you're not the mind, you're something divine. It's like, okay, but what does that actually mean? So Krishna's going to explain it step by step. I love this chapter. This is like the engineering chapter of the Gita. And one thing Krishna says in this verse, he says, I'll explain it in brief, which is funny. We might laugh a little bit because it's like a whole chapter is dedicated to this. And by the time we're done, we might feel like, wow, that didn't feel very brief. But we should understand there is like the Vedas are so vast, the Vedic literature. This is why I love Eastern philosophy. It's just so vast that this is really just a summary of it. And the point is not to get like overwhelmed with philosophical details. The whole reason that Krishna is even telling Arjuna all of this, let's not forget that the context of what's going on in the story now. The whole reason that he's telling him this is so that he can understand the difference between matter and spirit. And once he has that knowledge, he can make a more informed decision about what he's going to do in his life. And so the same for us. Once we understand the difference between matter and spirit, we can make more informed, mature decisions every day. And this is the goal of the chapter, just to stop confusing the body with the self. And that has just such huge implications for, again, the decisions that we make as we move through life. Just like in my dream, my decision to stop tolerating, being treated in a way that's not loving. So because we learn to love ourselves, and not just on a superficial level, but on a very deep level. And in that, we learn to love everybody around us. Again, not because of our ego's relationship with them necessarily, but because we see them for who they are, and that is a spirit soul. And every spirit soul is deserving of love. No matter what mistakes they've made, no matter where they've been in their past, no matter their rough, abrasive personality, they're still deserving of love, just like we are. And in the purport, Prabhupada makes an important point. He says, he's constantly coming back to this. People can read these verses and they can conclude that the individual soul and the super soul, God in the heart, are ultimately the same. We talked about how we each have an individual soul and we have God, and God is in the heart. And people can mistake them for being the same, but we should understand they're very different. The individual soul knows just one field, just this field of my body, mind, machine. The super soul knows all fields. So the super soul knows this field, knows your field, Nancy's field, Annie's field, Mariah's field, all of the fields. So in other words, it's like saying someone who can lift a pebble and who can move a mountain have exactly the same strength. And we can say yes, they both have strength, but the magnitude is completely different. So we should understand this is such a humbling point. This really puts us in our right perspective that we are so finite and God is infinite. And this is why our natural position is that of being dependent on him, not going off on our own and I got this. It's not like, oh, I'm going to change the world. It's like, no, I'm going to connect to source. And through that, through that connection, Krishna, please use me as an instrument of your love and compassion, because that's my constitutional position as your servant. Right? So the super soul and the soul both are spiritual. They're both qualitatively the same, but Krishna's knowledge, Krishna's power, Krishna's presence, they're unlimited. And ours is so finite. Ours is so finite. It's like, even if you think of the most knowledgeable, powerful, charming person, and you think, wow, they're so charming. It's like, we're here. Maybe that person's here. God is like way up here in the sky. So we can't even really compare. So throughout this chapter, Krishna helps us appreciate, both this similarity and this distinction. And this distinction is necessary because if we weren't separate, there would be no loving relationship. If we were all just one, where's room for relationship there? So we have to have our individual identity to have this relationship. But at the same time, we should understand at our essence that we are spirit souls. We are of spiritual quality. And this realization sets us free. Okay, so that's 13.4. Let's move to 13.5. If anybody wants to share anything, please just interrupt me. 13.5, I'm just finding my screen here. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Shraddhanjali.
That knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect.
Thank you. So one thing I really appreciate about this verse is that Krishna, he doesn't simply say like, believe me because I said so. And if anybody could say this, it would be him because he is the ultimate authority. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. So it wouldn't even be, it would be like a fact, if he said that. But he doesn't say that. He points to the great sages and the Vedic scriptures, Guru and Sastra, he points to. And he says, what I'm teaching, it's not something that's new. It's this eternal truth. It's an eternal truth that's been understood, it's been realized, it's been carefully preserved throughout the Vedic tradition. So it reminds us, that this genuine spiritual wisdom, it's not something that's like invented, even though Krishna is, he's the inventor. It's not something that it's something that's discovered, that's realized, and that's faithfully passed down. It's always been there. Like if we think about like gravity, Isaac Newton, he didn't create gravity, but he described something that was already true. So in the same way, spiritual knowledge, it's just revealed as those that are revealing spiritual knowledge to us, they're just revealing reality as it goes on, the body, the individual soul, the supreme soul. These truths are eternally true. Even our teachers, when we think about our teachers, it's they're just passing the knowledge down. Sometimes we get kind of like in awe of our teachers, like, oh, they know so much, but they're just instruments in this whole disciplic succession. And this is how a tradition is preserved, and it's beautiful. So Krishna is pointing that out in this verse. And the other thing he says is that these teachings are presented with reasoning, which I also love. The engineer in me also loves, because sometimes people assume spirituality asks us to stop thinking. It's just like this woohoo, like love everyone. Like it's like hippies, maybe it gets a little bad rep, like these people aren't deep thinkers. But it's actually the opposite. The opposite is true there. And the Gita encourages us to ask questions. It encourages us to reflect, to examine, to understand. And this is the beautiful thing about spirituality. It's not blind acceptance. It's confidence that we grow as we hear. As we grow, as we hear and we think deeply around things and we apply the teachings. And then that experience, we experience the truth that way. I was just listening to a podcast the other day. Somebody sent me, it was called The Hidden Brain. And it was like this psychologist who had done a lot of different studies on the brain to show that spirituality, to show like the benefits of spirituality to the brain. And she was saying that like religion, it was like 100% environmental, like we're grown up and in a religious place. And we this is just the way that she defined it. So it's religion can be different things to different people, but just defining this word like we're taught religion. But spirituality is something that we experience. And there's a part of our brain that lights up like it's a real relationship. Like we're connected in this relationship. And in that way it's like experiential, something that we experience. It's not something that we're just told is true. And she was pointing to she was talking about how the science of the brain supports this. And it was really cool. She actually said that 1/3 of spirituality is innate. So like every one of us has the capacity for spiritual connection. And 2/3 is environmental, meaning that the decisions that we make throughout the day, throughout our lives, help like support that or don't. But it's innate to everybody. But deciding on depending on who we associate with and how we spend our time, that capacity is brought out, and that connection is strengthened or not. It's a really interesting podcast. I could go on and on about some of the things we learned in it, but anyway, okay, that was a detour. So this is 13:5. Okay, 13:5. Does anybody want to share anything before we move on to the next verse, 6 and 7? Okay, let's move on to the next verse. This will be the last ones that we do for the day. Oh, just one second. I just saw somebody just joined. I want to admit them. Pooja. Pooja just found us on YouTube. She was like doing this spiritual pilgrimage in Spain, and she thought, I want to hear about the Bhagavad-gītā. So she YouTubed Gita and she found us. We connected at a japa session. So it's nice to see you, Pooja. Okay, we'll go back to sharing this screen. Whenever you're ready, Stella.
Uh,
Oh, let me change.
Scroll up a little.
Yeah, there you go. There we go.
The 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects: desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms and convictions. All these are considered, in summary, to be the field of activities and its interactions.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so at first glance, this verse can be a little overwhelming because it's quite a long list we have here. It's actually more than 24 items, things that are listed here. Because, and Krishna's listing all of this because he's answering the question that he raised earlier, which is what exactly is the field? Because the field isn't just our physical body. It's everything that makes up our material experience. So he lists 24 elements of the field, and if you ever take a Bhakti Sastri class, you do have to memorize all of these elements for the test. I remember this. I remember this very clearly, but I wouldn't. No need to remember them now. But just to kind of put them out there. This is Sankhya philosophy, which is like breaking down all the material elements so that we can understand them for what they are and what they aren't. So the 24 elements, we have the 5 gross elements. I'm just going to go over these really quickly, and then we'll get to why we care. So earth, water, fire, air, ether. And then you have the 3 subtle elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested material nature. Right? And then you have the 11 senses. So the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin, the 5 working senses: the hands, the feet, speech, organs of generation, organs of evacuation, plus the mind. And then lastly, the 5 sense objects: form, sound, smell, taste, touch. Okay, that was a quick list. You could, if you chat GPT, it's 24 material elements, it would give you the list if you're interested in looking at it more. But then Krishna adds the various transformations that arise within the field, which are things like desire, hatred, happiness, distress, life symptoms, convictions. Okay, so we don't have to spend time analyzing all of these. The point is, again, not to memorize the list. The point is that everything that we normally identify with belongs to the field. Everything we normally identify with belongs to the field. And and Krishna lists all these things, but he doesn't list the soul because the soul isn't part of the field. The soul is the one experiencing the field. So just because I experience anger, it doesn't mean that I am anger. This is mind-blowing. This when we can really imbibe this realization. Just because I experience happiness, it doesn't mean that I am happiness. Just because I experience thoughts, it doesn't mean that I am my thoughts. They're all experiences occurring within the field. And the soul is the witness of them all. I've been playing with this a little bit this week. I've had some hard nights where I've just been up really early and my mind is just so restless. And and I thought there was some things going on in my life, but then as time went on and it was still happening, and I was like, there's nothing really to be making me anxious. I like ChatGPT to, and ChatGPT is like, well, according to your last blood results, I have a thyroid issue and it's like messing up my hormones. And anyway, so I don't really know what it is, but whatever it is, it's the field. It's not me. And I was experiencing like a lot of anxiety and a lot of restlessness. And just to even in that moment, like experience that and feel all the gunk associated with it and know, okay, this isn't me. And even though I'm experiencing this, this is very uncomfortable. This isn't me. And so let me use this time that I'm up at, 1 a.m. to lean into who I really am, to remember who I really am. And so I did that. I just chanted and read all night. And I actually didn't even feel tired the next day. I kind of continued into the next day, but it really lifted me up. So it is possible when we can start to get some distance, some separation. Because usually when I feel really anxious or really restless, I'm like looking for cookies or brownies or some kind of sugar that's gonna like, I think make me feel better, but really just becomes addictive and makes me feel worse. Right? So if we in these moments when we're feeling really intensely, whatever it is, anger, happiness, distress, anxiety, depression, whatever it is, if we can just say, okay, yep, label it like my field is experiencing this, and I'm going to make this conscious decision to engage in some spiritual practices that remind me of who I actually am and connect me with that eternal identity. If we can do that, the more we do that, the more even space we create between the observer of the field and the field. And in that, the more free we become from the shackles that the field binds us to. And it's liberating and it's sweet. So I would invite you to play with this week. I would invite you to play with this week when you're experiencing something in the field that is unpleasant. Maybe if it's something physically in the body, maybe something emotionally, maybe something mental. Just say, okay, yep, just label it. I'm experiencing this. This is what I'm feeling. I'm going to take shelter of these spiritual practices. And then I'm going to see how I feel. I would extend that invitation to you because this was really it was a fun experiment for me yesterday, and it helps and it reinforces also, it helps us to even realize these truths on a deeper level. Okay, so I have three different analogies that I want to talk about that can help us to really understand how this field and the knower of the field interact and work together. Okay, and the first thing that I want to say, and I have an analogy for this, is that consciousness doesn't come from matter. Consciousness doesn't come from matter. Sometimes people will assume that consciousness is like a product of the material body. We should understand Krishna doesn't say that. Matter does not produce consciousness. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul. It comes from the soul and it's expressed through the body and mind vehicle. And one analogy that I really like that I go to a lot, if you've listened to me a good amount, you've probably heard me say this analogy, is a flashlight. Because the light represents the consciousness, the lens represents the mind, and the outer casing is the physical body. Okay, so the light itself is clear and steady, but it has to shine through the lens. And so if the lens is dirty or scratched or covered, the light may appear dim, or it gets distorted. But the light itself hasn't changed. That stream of consciousness, it's pure. But the lens is preventing it from shining clearly. That's like, again, our mind. And so this is the way our consciousness works. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul. The soul is naturally conscious, but that consciousness is currently being expressed through the mind and the body. And so if the mind is clouded by anything, anger, fear, envy, selfish desire, false ego, our consciousness becomes distorted as it passes through. And so in that, we may see situations inaccurately, or we may react in ways that we know don't really align with our deeper nature. Or we may forget the conscious self behind the mind and body altogether. And so this is why spiritual practice is so important. This is why sometimes when you get done, meditating or you get off this podcast, you feel like clearer in a way that maybe you didn't feel before. Like maybe you're inspired to react to a certain situation with more love and compassion than you were before. Because what these practices do is literally clear the lens of that flashlight. It's like we're scrubbing the lens of that flashlight so that the consciousness can shine through clearly. It uncovers what's been there all along. As consciousness is there, it's always been there, it's always pure. But the lens gets mucky. So as the mind gets purified, the soul's natural qualities can shine through more clearly. So this is why after spiritual practices, you're able to interact and move around this world in a more compassionate, peaceful way, loving way. So the body and the mind are part of the field, but the consciousness illuminating that field comes from the soul. So this is something we should all walk away from this class with, understanding this. Consciousness does not come from matter. It comes from the soul. Okay, so even after understanding where this consciousness comes from, that leads us to another question, which is what happens when that consciousness becomes completely absorbed in the world around us? And so this takes us to our next analogy. Our next analogy, and at the end of these three analogies, I have a nice picture, like visualization of them all working together. So just hang tight for these analogies and then we'll see how they work together. So this is the movie theater analogy. So imagine you're sitting in a movie theater and the screen, the projector, the speakers, the lighting, everything is working to create this experience. And so as you're watching this movie, you're crying, you're laughing, you're becoming anxious, you're celebrating when the hero wins. My daughter loves puppy dogs. And so we were like, sometimes we'll have on like a puppy dog movie, like if I have to get something done, or I'll just turn on this puppy dog movie. And sometimes I'll find myself like getting caught in this movie where like the dogs are talking and they're friends and they're going through problems, and then the dog gets lost. And sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that this dog finds his way home. It's like, it's so obviously fake. It's these cartoon talking dogs, but you get so drawn into it, you know? And you almost forget that it's not real. Like you're sitting in a theater, your attention is so absorbed and none of it's even happening to you. You're just observing it. But it's as if it is. I'm relating with that puppy dog that is in the pound and is suffering, because the movie has just captured your attention. So material life does the same thing to us. Our consciousness is not material. Our consciousness is spiritual, but it gets so absorbed in this experience of the body, the successes, the failures, the praise, the criticism, the joys, on and on, that we start believing this is who I am. I am this body. I belong to this family. I am this nationality. I am successful. I am a failure. We just over-identify with. And we can see how easily it happens because I literally start identifying with this dog, this talking cartoon dog. So this is what we're doing in material life. And Krishna reminds us, no, no, you're the one watching the movie. You're not the movie itself. Those identities belong to the field. You are the knower of the field. So just like sometimes I have to turn off that movie and reorientate back to my quote unquote real life so that I don't get so consumed. Ever watch a movie and then you're like sad the whole day after because you're so overly identified with what was on the screen? That's what we're doing all the time. We're so enthralled in material nature around us. We're so infatuated with it that we start to think it's us. Again, this is why it's so important to go back to our spiritual practices that remind us who we actually are. It's like turning off the TV and getting back to real life, quote unquote. Sometimes we have to turn off the TV of our material life, of our material field, and connect with who we actually are so that we remember, so that we can live from that identity. And the last analogy we have here, and this is an analogy that really ties everything together, I think. This is the playground analogy. Okay, so we've seen that consciousness comes from the soul. We've seen how that consciousness can become absorbed in the field, the movie analogy. Now we come to this last question, which Shakti so beautifully talked about in our last episode, our last time together, which is why each of us have a different field to begin with. And there's this nice analogy of a child in a fenced-in backyard, like playing in a fenced-in backyard, like within the fence. And so within this fence, the child has real freedom. They can run, they can play, they can ride their toy car. My daughter has one of those, and it is exhausting, let me tell you. The kind you have to like push around. Anyway, the child can choose what they want to do, but they can't go beyond the fence. So their freedom is real. They have real freedom, but it's also limited. You know, our fields work in much the same way. So all of us have a particular body. We all have a particular body, a particular mind. We have certain talents. We have certain opportunities, certain limitations. And we're given this according to our past karma. So an earthworm has a very small field of activity. It can crawl through the soil, but that's really about it. My dog has a little larger field. A human being has an even greater one. We have this extraordinary capacity. We can think, we can reflect, we can make choices. We talked about the different koshas, how the spectrum that our consciousness is capable of reaching, because of this field. So we can make this choice, to ultimately pursue this spiritual realization. Our field enables that. Our consciousness is pure, but because of the mechanism of which it's being expressed, it's so sophisticated that this field enables us for spiritual realization, facilitates better. This field facilitates spiritual realization. Okay, so every one of us is in this field that we've been given. And Krishna's not partial. Okay, he's not randomly assigning different bodies or different circumstances. He's not like standing at the top like, you were on the naughty list. I'm going to give you the body of a pig. It's like as the super soul, as God in the heart, he sanctions the field that corresponds to each person's karma, each person's previous actions. So whatever you've done in your past life, or you reap that you're is contributing to the next body that you're going to get. So the important thing, this is what we don't want to get stuck in. We don't want to get stuck in the comparison game. We don't want to get stuck comparing our field to somebody else's field. Because then if we're stuck there, we're still just stuck in material consciousness. When the whole point of the field is to use what we've been given to transcend that material consciousness. And every one of us in a human body is capable of that, has that. Just like that study I was telling you, one third of our spiritual inclination is innate. Two-thirds is environmental. So how am I using the field I've been given? That wasn't Gita, by the way. That was again the podcast that I listened to of this brain science. Okay, because whatever our circumstances are, every field can become a place for spiritual growth. And so this is where Krishna's leading Arjuna. He's not trying to make him just this like amazing philosopher. He's trying to help him see reality clearly. Because right understanding leads to right direction. Right understanding leads to right direction. And with that, I want to pull up this image that I made. Well, I didn't make it. I asked ChatGPT to make it. But this is all of the analogies that we just went through. So the first with the flashlight, to show us where consciousness actually comes from. It doesn't come from matter. We have the casing, the lens. This is part of the field. Okay, and then we have the movie theater analogy to show just how absorbed we get in what's happening on the screen that we over-identify. So we consciously, we have to decide where we're shining our flashlight. Are we shining our flashlight on the movie screen? Are we shining our flashlight on classes like this and meditation? Because wherever we're shining it is where it's going. And then lastly, this playground analogy to show that each of us has a different field. And that's determined by our karma. But that's not to worry. Whatever field we have, it has a capacity for spiritual realization. And are we deciding to use it like that? Right? By what we expose it to, the environment, the people, the practices. Okay. So here and then here on the bottom is how all the fields work together. I can put this like in our live thread group too, if it'd be useful to you all. But the purpose, where I want to get here in the bottom right hand screen, the purpose of it all is to see ourselves clearly so we can live correctly or in line, in harmony with who we actually are. I don't like how they put the word correctly there. It's not necessarily correctly, it's more in alignment. I'm an eternal soul. I'm part of Krishna. What does Krishna want me to do? Shashank, do you have a question for us?
Yes. So I think this thought of this movie theater where you have written Krishna is saying that we are the one watching the movie, but we are not the movie itself. So that means, is this the reason that we cannot make any changes to what has already been done or already destined? So it's just that just watch what has happened. Is it something like that, Radha Mataji?
I mean, there's some amount of, we've talked about this too before, we have some influence over our field. There's some choices we can make that impact our field. And then there's also some that we've just been given. Um, I don't know that I would take this particular analogy that far. I'd maybe just take this for what it is, and that is that we can all relate to getting absorbed in a movie and to overly identifying with the characters. And so we should understand that if we are spirit souls, we get overly identified with our material designations. That's really the point of this analogy. That being said, the point that you're making is also there's that we could also go into that a little bit. There's also some truth there. We have some influence, but we don't have total influence. And that's maybe a little bit better demonstrated by the playground analogy to say that we each have a different field and we can control kind of what we do inside the field, but we're still limited to the field that we have. Some people's field is going to have a nice sandbox and a little toy car like this boy's. Some people are going to be outside and it's a desert. Um, when we had the conversation with Shakti last class, we talked about, some of us are driving a Ferrari, some of us are driving an old Chevy truck, that constantly has to pull over and requires maintenance but ultimately, how are we using the field that we've been given? Are we using it to drive closer to Krishna? Is that our destination? Is that what's plugged into our GPS? That's what's important. So, um, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes. But again, this also brings to one more question, right? So, when we don't have any control over things, but why do we still try to make so much of changes? We just blame ourselves for something having gone wrong, or we keep getting attracted to something which might be either a failure or a success, and we are just revolving around this, and we are not
Mm.
understanding what exactly is the ultimate need, right? So, how do we really get better in these things? Because when I understand this whole concept, just forget everything what is going to happen, what has happened. It's definitely something that Krishna wants, and just leave it. So if we consider it that way, it's fine. But still we are the ones who try to keep on hunting behind, okay, I need to do this, I need to do something else, I need to make everybody proud, I need to make myself proud. It really doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah. Isn't it funny?
Yes.
Isn't it funny that we do that? We become so obsessed sometimes in the externals that we forget even, who we actually are. This is just a product. What you just explained is what happens when we get so overly identified with the material designations, with the field, that we think that we are the field, and we become obsessed with controlling the external circumstances instead of going inwards and connecting with who we actually are. And you know what you just said? This is a great. I said that yesterday. I spent the whole day doing spiritual practices, which just took me from like here to here. But the day before that, when I was really struggling with this, I was talking to my husband and I was like, I just have no time to do what I really want to do. I had this whole plan, like maybe we just need to move to New Vrindavan, and then, all these reasons why it was like, and he was just like, why are you, he's like, that is just so, you're just too focused on like changing the things around you. And I was like, yeah, I am kind of like we get sometimes so obsessed with them. Like sometimes the things around us require a healthy change, but at the same time, we shouldn't think that just changing our material circumstance is going to change our consciousness. Because more often than not, we carry our consciousness with us, the same consciousness we had from material circumstance to material circumstance, and the same problem nags at us again, even if it's, looks a little bit different. It's in a different dress or something. It's a similar issue because the issue is in our consciousness. Not really. Our consciousness is pure, but the issue is because we haven't really connected with who we actually are, and we're not living from that place. And when we do, naturally, the mechanism by which our consciousness is being um, projected gets clean. and and so that's really where a lot of the focus needs to be. And when we do that, we'll see as a byproduct the external things around us that we thought were the problem start to impact us much less because we're not shedding so much light on them. We're not so stuck in the movie theater anymore, like this man watching this in the second analogy here, that even though things are still happening on the screen, we're not overly identified with them. So therefore, I'm not like crying when the dog gets sent to the pound, because I'm not overly identified with the dog. It may still be happening, but I know where my real life is. Does this make sense? So just to bring this home here, on the surface, Arjuna's situation, his problem was not even necessarily like whether to fight or not. Like this is obviously his external situation, his external problem. But beneath that, there was a deeper confusion about who he really was. He was identifying himself through his temporary body relationships, as a son, a grandson, a disciple, a cousin. he was just so overly identified with those designations that he forgot who he actually was. He was so engrossed in the movie. So before Krishna even tells Arjuna what to do, he first reminds him who he is. That was like the entire chapter two. You're not this temporary body. You're an eternal soul. Because once Arjuna understands this, I'm not this body. I'm a soul. I'm part of God. Then he can understand his duty with greater clarity. And so this is a nice lesson for us. For Arjuna, for a lot of us, we're asking questions like, what do I feel like doing? What's best for me? Arjuna's consciousness was even higher than that. Arjuna was just looking for the right thing to do. He was so duty bound, right? And so Krishna is inviting us to raise our consciousness from asking, what will satisfy me, to asking what is right, which is a higher level of consciousness, less self-centered, and ultimately to what would please Krishna. Okay, so this is why this analysis matters. None of us are here trying to be philosophers. It doesn't matter if you can memorize these 24 elements or not, but understand what we're saying here, understand the concepts around them, because it helps us to see ourselves clearly so that we can live in alignment with who we truly are. That's what we really want to take away. Everything that Krishna's listed, the body, the senses, the mind, the emotions, the desires, the dislikes, the likes, it's all belonging to the field. They're all things that we experience, but they're not who we are. Okay, we're the knower of the field. And Krishna is the supreme knower. He's present within every heart, guiding us from within. So the more that we remember him, the less controlled that we become by this temporary drama that's unfolding on the movie screen. And therefore, the more that we're living from our real identity as eternal servants of God. So bringing this back to our practical lives as we walk out of here today, I want to kind of encourage you all as you're moving through your life, your day, when something happens to you, if somebody praises you, criticizes you, your body aches, you can't sleep, your field is just getting in the way. Instead of maybe making the decision that you usually make for security, for comfort, for just like going off grid and forgetting, pause for a minute and ask yourself, am I responding as the field, or am I responding as the knower of the field? Because just this shift will change everything. Because the spiritual life, it's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who we've been all along. And this is an eternal soul, a beloved part of Krishna. And by connecting with him through our spiritual practices, we learn moment by moment how to live from that identity as the lens of our flashlight gets cleaned. So this is a lesson for today. Do we have any reflections or anything anybody would like to share before we end our time here together? Are you all in? Chantal, look at you weeding.
I turned on one thing, I turned off the other. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yay! I found out the problem is every time I go from my car to my headphones and back and forth, because I'm always moving and going from the house to the driving to the clubhouse where I teach. But anyway, yeah, I'm working on the rose gardens over here. It's the tribute garden on this side, for all of the club members that have contributed here and have passed away. So anyway,
Oh,
on topic. I've had several thoughts pop up, and I raised my hand at one point, lowered my hand, but I'm going to bring it all together.
love that.
So towards the beginning, okay, let me just get my thought out to tie it all together. So I teach my kids what you have been talking about today, specifically my 9-year-old. I mean, I teach my 15-year-old, don't get me wrong, 14-year-old, she'll be 15 this year. But I teach this to my kids. We are very involved parents. My kids are homeschooled, and we don't force anything upon them, whether it be religion, spirituality, whatever. But we do bring it into every single aspect of our life, to the dinner table, to the mistakes that they make in school and, in life, to things so simple as my 9-year-old saying, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I'm hungry, which you're going to start to hear a lot more as she gets older. Um, and my husband started this before he was my husband, but my husband started this. And he looks at her, he goes, you're not hungry. You feel hungry. And after he did this for about 3 years and her getting so mad, right? Finally, she now walks around, she'll say, I feel hungry. But it's translated into, I feel upset. I feel sad. I feel anxious. And that was something I had to do in my life too, because I had a lot of anxiety. And instead of saying I'm anxious, which, right, I'm not only identifying with that, but I'm now claiming it, right? It's not just something I'm experiencing. I'm claiming it for mine. I'm taking that on. I am this thing, but you're not. Um, so we teach that to our children. We use that in our lives. I've used that big time in my life. But I also want to use that to translate it into something else. Um, these feelings, these experiences that we have are not us, right? But they are catalysts for this human experience to encourage spiritual growth. Your hunger is a catalyst to teach you, for example, a 9-year-old, patience while mom is trying to finish cooking and do the dishes. I can't get the food out of the hot pan right now and put it in your mouth. I mean, I could, but that would be child abuse and very irresponsible. Um, so that is a catalyst to teach that child patience, or maybe that moment of hunger is a catalyst to teach me as the parent patience as my child is saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And then I turn around and I scream, I'm working on dinner, right? And then you're like, oh, crap. And now you have a moment of reflection. Or let's say that your catalyst is your anger in a traffic jam. Why are you angry? What brings up that anger? And then to touch upon the gentleman who spoke and your feedback to him, I can't remember his name. Forgive me. I'm so bad with names.
Shawshank.
Shawshank. Okay. I teach so many people. I see so many people. It takes a while to remember names. So all of this leads me to a teaching that Ram Dass talks about all the time, right? So we're here. We've chosen to be here. And it depends on what you believe. This is, I think, a combination of bhakti and samkhya, because Ram Dass was a bhakti yogi, and there's some samkhya yoga philosophy in here. But we live this life, this human experience, however many times it takes in order to go back to serve, right? Finally, completely, to find moksha, right? Not just a death. And in order to find moksha, we have to take the human curriculum to grow, which is why we have those catalysts, those emotions, experiences, fears, aversions, likes, dislikes. So you have to take the human curriculum in order to grow and to remember to come back to who you truly are. So although it may seem confusing that certain things happen in life to us, there's a reason. And although it might not sound pleasing to the ears at this moment, we've chosen it. We chose to come into this life and live a life as a woman, to have, anxiety, depression, to have specific trauma, because I knew that would be a catalyst to growing and getting closer to God. Right. And, yeah.
Yeah.
So you are not your
Beautifully
feelings.
said.
You are not your experiences. You are not all these things, but these things, these experiences, these feelings are catalysts to our growth and our spiritual evolution. getting
Mm-hmm.
closer to God, and we've chosen it all.
Yes. Beautifully said.
And that's my takeaway from today and my previous studies and teaching. So thank you, Radha, for
Yeah.
another great session. Well, weeding.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was so nice. Thank you, Chantal.
Of course.
Shakti.
Everybody. I'll keep it short because I know it's over time. Um, but um, I really identified with everything that you were sharing, and that we are not the experiences that are happening. These experiences are happening, and then uh, what do we learn from these experiences? How do we grow? How do we change? How do we, And one of the things when I came back from, well, I learned this while I was in the manor, but when I would come home and I'm like, I'm having breakfast, and I'm like, oh, I got to offer my breakfast. And so, and and I was starving, and I was, like I felt hungry. And so I was like, oh, wait, I have to offer it. And that takes time. And so it's sort of like, I like the fact that I have to pause, and I can't just like I have to pause and
Mm,
offer it to Krishna. And then I have to say my prayers before I eat, and then I eat. So it's sort of like
mm,
this, just this new way of, and I've noticed also that I'm starting to get my food ready earlier so that I'm not starving, and then I
yeah.
can really pay attention to my prayers. That's just
Uh,
one instance and that I brought home from there. There's many, but that was just one that I thought I would share because it's just a bit of a simple one. Yeah.
yeah. So nice. Bringing mindfulness into the day, and it's more mindful than being connected to Krishna. Thank you. Thank you. Palachanji and Shraddhanjali.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I liked what Chantal was saying. I think it is, a human curriculum we're in. Just one point that, for me, is that feelings are that I guess the field can produce feelings, but I think feelings do come from the soul because we do love Krishna, and we can even be angry at Krishna. And I don't think that's a material thing. So when we're connected with source, I think the feelings can be there. So then the question is, what are what's the source of those feelings? Is it produced by the field? Is it part of the material world? Or where can we make feelings be a spiritual thing from the spiritual world?
Mm,
So I
mm,
mean, 'cause I'm just like I'm somebody who, I don't know. I think feelings are one of those things that can flow between the soul and the field. But I
mm.
don't know if that's legit. It's just how I see it, and I can learn more about that, and if anyone has any other knowledge, but that's just how I feel about it. Like,
Yeah. Well, we are emotional beings, for sure. We're emotional beings. And when those emotions sometimes get misdirected, that's where they become kind of part of the field, like we're angry when we don't get something that we want. Um, so yes and no, I would say based off of what I know. A lot of times we may think that what the anger we're experiencing is spiritual, but it's actually more material. I think that's probably more common than not, is that we mistake. But we are emotional beings, and absolutely our emotions are can be very spiritual. Yeah.
I have to agree with both of you. I really like the point that you brought up, Shraddhanjali. Um, yeah, right. So going back to the hunger comes from a material desire, right? Comes from that material desire. But unconditional love, like for Krishna and for one another, is still an emotion. It's energy in motion. And that emotion should not be denied or suppressed. That's an emotion that should be cultivated and fed. So, yeah, I agree on that one.
Nice. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, my friends, I think we are way over, so maybe we should conclude for today, but it was so nice being here with you all and hearing your reflections and shares. Yeah, thank you for walking this journey together. And I'll see you maybe Sunday, maybe Monday. Thank you all.
Thank you.